Welcome into College Corner. We're getting into the NCAA Tournament bracket. It's fresh on our minds here. I just watched the selection show, just went through the bracket for the very first time. So you guys are going to be doing it with me as I do it again here for a second time and giving you everything you need to know about these teams. We're going to go through this as quickly as we can to just give you guys an idea of where my thoughts are. If you're looking for a little bit more like details on every single team, we'll be dropping a video tomorrow, is what you need to know about all 68 teams in the tournament in 20 minutes. So be sure to watch that. Subscribe to the channel if you do want to see that. Hit that like button, get the post notifications on. Also, last thing, I do bet on these games a ton. So if you guys want some betting picks as well, drop me a follow on Twitter. I'll include that link down below in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let's not waste any more time and jump into things. Okay, we'll be starting in the East region. How I'm going to do this is start with each of the regions, go all the way to the Elite Eight, pick our team to make the Final Four in that region, and we'll move to the next. That way we keep every team top of mind for you guys and how I would approach them in each and every game. So we're going to start here with the 1 seed UConn. The East is a gauntlet. There are so many good teams in this region. I was shocked at how good this region is, by far the best in the tournament. Start with UConn, the reigning national champions. Can they go back-to-back, which no team has done since 2009? UConn gets Stetson in the first round. Look, Stetson has a bit of a recipe offensively to score a ton of points. They're a high-volume three-point shooting team led by Jalen Blackman, who scored 43 points in the ASUN title game, but they don't play a lick of defense. So moving UConn along here, honestly, not much of a question. I know we see, these types of teams, we've seen a 16 seed beat a 1 seed, don't see it here. Next to the 9-8 game between Florida Atlantic and Northwestern, FAU returns all these guys. They return Janelle Davis, Elijah Martin, Vladislav Golden, the team that made that Final Four run, but have not played like that type of team this year. They fell to Temple in the AAC semifinal, didn't even make the title game. Northwestern, strong team, have beaten Purdue again this year, led by Bowie Bowie. This team is a lot of fun to watch. My problem with them, though, is they're not an excellent rebounding team. This FAU team, I know they've had their struggles. Defensively hasn't been great either. I do see FAU here with Martin and Davis making a lot of threes in this game, so I do have them advancing, but I definitely think Northwestern has a great shot at winning this game too. Now, my first upset here, true upset, is going to be UAB over San Diego State. San Diego State coming off the national championship appearance, had a lot of changes, but Jaden Ledee is an absolute monster for this team. But their guard play from Trammell, Butler, I don't really love. UAB won the AAC. Fantastic run here. We're not expected to be in the tournament, but what I like about this team that they should be able to take advantage of here is being able to have to get to the free throw line and also get a ton of points, second chance points on the offensive glass. Ledee can run into foul trouble. I think UAB has a decent chance to put him in that trouble. They're not a bad interior defense, have some good size. I think for San Diego State, a team that's had some changes, been another long season here, I think UAB pulls this one out in shocking fashion as the 12th seed. Auburn and Yale. Yale is a team, the Ivy League gives a lot of trouble. Princeton knocked off Arizona last year. That three-point shooting is what can kind of do it against these top seeds. Yale's not that team. They got a lot of talent, though. Danny Wolf, the 7-footer, Bez Mebang, Matt Nolan won the Ivy League championship game for him with a big last-second shot. Auburn, though, is so stingy defensively, have a really well-rounded team here, rounding into form, winning the SEC tournament. Yale doesn't take a lot of threes, and that's what I think you need here to pull off and have this recipe of the big upset. So I'm going to have Auburn moving on here. Duquesne and BYU. BYU has really struggled to close out the year. They were super hot at the start of the season. One of the highest volume three-point shooting teams in the entire country, but they've fallen off as of late. Expected a better run in the Big 12 tournament, didn't give us that. Duquesne, veteran-laden team, plays really good defensively, not very efficient, though, their numbers offensively. BYU is a really tough read here, and Duquesne, I think with their veterans, can definitely give them some trouble, but I do think BYU and their offensive performance and their ability to really dominate on the glass in this game will be enough for me to have them moving on. Morehead State is a really tough matchup for Illinois, a tough draw for them. This team has been very, very good this year. Riley Minix, the NAIA transfer, is averaging over 20 points per game for the Eagles. My thing here is Illinois is very consistent, very strong. Morehead State actually played Purdue and Alabama in their first 3 games of the year, lost those games by 30-plus points apiece. So some of their performance is probably coming from, their ability to dominate the conference. But man, numbers-wise, very strong defense from the field. So definitely a team to look out for here. And if Illinois lets them get hot from the three-point line, which they're capable of doing, This could be one of those 3 seeds that gets upset, but Illinois is a team that I just don't have as much concern with them from these smaller schools being able to pull it off. Definitely when they face that top-level competition, they've struggled. But when they're favorites, when they're expected to win, they usually take care of business. So as much as I think this could be a scare, I'm still going to have Illinois moving on. The Drake Bulldogs are back in the tournament after a great performance against Miami in round 1 last year. Gave them a really good scare. Tucker DeVries and Darnell Brody are back for this team. DeVries is just an awesome talent. But Washington State, a great run this season. They have, with Drake, I expect them to pull something out if they play one of these 3-point shooting teams that's not very physical inside in the paint. Washington State isn't that. They get their points inside. Miles Rice has been great for them, the guard, but they have the size to score inside, take advantage of what's been some suspect interior defense from Drake. I do love this Drake team. I think they're going to be a popular team for others to take to pull off an upset. But Washington State, though, I think is very much overlooked. And in this matchup, I like Washington State a little bit more. All right, hear me out here. I know South Dakota State is going to be a sizable underdog, 15-plus points, but this is the 2 seed I'm most concerned about. Iowa State has been great. Finished the season winning the Big 12 tournament. They are very, very hot right now. They've continued to impress me with how well they play. They dominated Houston in the Big 12 championship game, but if there's anything I'm picking out in terms of recipe to beat Iowa State, it's a team that can be super efficient from the 3-point line, and that is what South Dakota State is. Very good 3-point shooting team. They're, shooting 36, almost 37%. They rely on a really efficient shooting offense, and it's something to me that I see with this Iowa State team, as good as their defense is, they really pressure the ball well. South Dakota State can take care of it. I have concerns as to whether or not their offense could keep up with the team, that if they really shoot it well, despite Iowa State's hawking defense, that they can score enough. I like Gilbert, I like Lipsy, but I still think this team is missing that true dominant scorer. I could see this South Dakota State team pulling it off with Zeke Mayo and Luke Appel. I'm going to pull off, this is the one crazy upset I'm going to have. I'm going to have South Dakota State beating Iowa State, with Iowa State being a darling with the way they've closed out the year. All right, now we move to the round of 32. With Washington State, I like their offense a little bit more, their 3-point shooting ability, especially because South Dakota State, like I mentioned, very efficient offense, can really make some threes, take a lot of threes. Washington State's got a strong defense, but their offense is a little bit more efficient to me than Iowa State's, and they're also a team that's not afraid to take some 3-point shots. I shouldn't say not afraid. They make a good volume of 3-point shots. They're super efficient from there. South Dakota State forced opponents to take a lot of them, and I trust Washington State a little bit more to make those shots. So despite the upset, I don't have South Dakota State making it on any farther. Now, Illinois and BYU. I mentioned BYU being in some trouble with Duquesne, and their 3-point shooting has really been a struggle as of late. Illinois is going to force them to play a little bit more on the interior and inside, make them a little bit more uncomfortable from being like a team taking like 50% of their shots from 3. I really like this Illinois team a lot with their consistency. Terrence Shannon is just a fantastic player. Coleman Hawkins can score from basically everywhere on the floor. I loved BYU early in the season, but at this point they're not playing their best basketball, and that's a bad recipe for the tournament. Now, UAB and Auburn. We've got I mentioned this, UAB team being able to get the free throw line, offensive rebound. Auburn can do those things just as well. And they've got the number 1 interior defense in college basketball. That's something that San Diego State does not have. And for UAB, that's where they're looking to get their points, is at the rim. Auburn's going to keep them away from there. So I don't have UAB going any farther than this. Now, I mentioned FAU being a team that also just hasn't found themselves this season, and just flipping that switch and being able to do that come tournament time is just not realistic, especially with this team that struggled all year despite expectations being that they have the same roster. How are they not going to replicate it? UConn just far too dominant, especially from the perspective of just having a litany of scorers here in Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, obviously Donovan Clingan defending the paint there. I think they match up and out-rebound FAU in a big way here with Ladislav Golden, so I'm going to take UConn to move on there. I mentioned how difficult it is to go back-to-back. This is a particular spot here where I'm really having that feeling of, can UConn, if UConn wins this game, I think there's a decent chance they just make it all the way back to the Final Four. Auburn is a matchup where I haven't trusted them throughout the season because they hadn't beat top-tier competition. Then they went to the SEC tournament, took down Florida to win it all. They still didn't play some great competition because of some of the seeds falling. I'm still not completely sold on them and what they've proven and the efficiency of their offense, where UConn has been so good. So with hesitancy, I'm going to go UConn to make it on to the Elite 8. I really like this Auburn team, but I just haven't seen it enough, and UConn has just been so dominant. Illinois, Washington State. I like Illinois' interior defense. Washington State, yes, they can make those threes, but they don't take them at a high volume. And where Illinois has really thrived has been in that interior defense, keeping their opponents off the line and being a strong rebounding team. So I like Illinois here to kind of take advantage of this particular matchup when it comes to their defense, and then the offense being at really high volume, or that three-point shooting team that can really make you pay. I think Washington State's okay in that South Dakota State game, but in this particular game, I lean with Illinois. Okay, now let's head to the South. Houston and Longwood. Longwood made a miraculous run to win the Big South tournament. Their team, from an efficiency perspective, both offensively and defensively, isn't very good. They're very reliant on some second chance points on the glass and being able to get to the free throw line. They should get the chance to do that a bit in this game, but when it comes to shooting wise, like, Houston can just put you in some massive droughts. So I think Longwood's run getting here ends in the first round. Nebraska and A&M. A&M is a tournament team. They made a run in the SEC tournament last year. They're capable of doing it in this particular matchup with Nebraska. Nebraska is a team that can definitely, Kisei Tominaga, that's a guy people are going to fall in love with. I really like this Nebraska team in their offense. The problem is rebounding. They're going to lose the rebounding battle, and A&M is the best rebounding team in the entire country, best offensive rebounding team in the entire country. So even if they're not making shots, which they don't make a lot of them, they're going to get second chance points. And for Nebraska, you're going to have to be super efficient in your three-point shooting if you want to make up for that. And when you're taking the threes, those are some lower volume shots. Sure, they're worth 3 over 2, but you're not going to make them as often as you're going to make those points on the interior. So I see with Nebraska having some major trouble with this particular matchup. I like them as a team, but this is the one team where it's like you're taking advantage of the biggest weakness. So I'm going to have A&M moving on here. Our next 5-12 game. Look, a 5-12, a 12 beats a 5 at least once a year. On average, I think it's 1.2. James Madison is going to be that really popular pick. And if Wisconsin did not close out by winning by making it to the Big Ten championship game and kind of getting out of that funk they've been in, I'd be more interested in James Madison. They've beaten Michigan State this year. Wisconsin is finally getting back to the team they were that was 6th in the country at one point this year. AJ Storr has been fantastic for them. Chucky Hepburn has found his game. If Max Klesmit is dropping some threes, this team is really scary with the way they can spread the floor. James Madison has a great offense. They're definitely capable of pulling this thing out, but I think what I find is the really popular 12s never seem to pull it out. Oral Roberts was that team for me, so I'm going with Wisconsin in this game. Duke and Vermont. Now, Vermont is a team that I think on paper Duke fans might be a little bit worried about, but Vermont this season has not been quite the same team when it comes to high-volume three-point shooting team, going to play really slow. So that's going to force you, the margins are slim in this game when you have less possessions. Problem is for Vermont, high-volume three-point shooting team that hasn't been nearly as efficient from three this year. I know Duke is a team that, physicality for me is a problem with them, but a team like Vermont isn't one that I see taking advantage of those issues. So I'm going to have Duke moving on here. Texas Tech, NC State. Look, I love NC State. DJ Horn, DJ Burns, a fantastic, exciting duo. DJ Burns, you cannot miss him. He's nearly 300 pounds. DJ Horn's a local guy that's been lights out from three. Texas Tech, though, NC State's problem has been, can we defend the three-point line? They didn't run into those three-point shooting teams when they played Duke, North Carolina, and Virginia. At Texas Tech with Pop Isaacs and Tucson, they're a team that takes a lot of threes, should kind of dominate the glass in this game. I want to move NC State along. I love their story, but Texas Tech isn't the matchup to be able to do so. Kentucky and Oakland. Look, Kentucky is a team that the range of outcomes are crazy. I think this team can win a national title, but they just do not play enough defense. Oakland's kind of similar to them. Offense is really good. They can definitely score. Trey Townsend's the guy they're going to feed to in the post and kick it out to some three-point shooters. Kentucky's got so much talent. Reed Shepherd, Antonio Reeves, Mitchell. I'm missing so many guys here. They're just an electric offense that Oakland, I need you to be able to play a little bit more defense to give me a chance, but maybe this game gets a little bit scary for Kentucky. Florida is getting the winner of Boise State and Colorado. Look, these play-in teams, there's always one team that makes it to the round of 32. It's happened, I think, every year but once since they introduced the play-in. I think Colorado beats Boise State. They got a really strong three-point defense and should be able to kind of keep Boise State's rebounding game Boise State's a strong rebounding team that they should probably be able to keep at bay, and they've struggled with their interior defense. Where Colorado, with KJ Simpson, Eddie Lampkin, Williams, they're just such a strong team that could score points in the paint. So I like Colorado to win that game. And then Florida, super good offensive rebounding team. This Florida team is super underrated in the SEC, but I like Colorado to keep their rebounding in check. That's really helped them in a big way offensively. And they don't have a great interior defense, so I'm going to take Colorado to beat Boise State and then be the team from the first four that gets to the round of 32 beating Florida. Marquette, Western Kentucky. I really like this Western Kentucky defense. The problem is if you're going to beat Marquette as one of those smaller schools, you got to shoot threes. Marquette is such a bad three-point defense and gives up a lot of those attempts. So that's the recipe I'm looking for from one of these mid-majors to beat them. That's not Western Kentucky's game. They don't really take much of any threes. I could see this game getting a little sticky if they don't get Tyler Kolek back from Marquette, but I expect them to do that, and I expect their offense to kind of take over here with a much better interior defense to be able to defend Western Kentucky. Okay, now making our way back up to the second round. Look, rebounding is a big problem for Marquette. They're outside the top 200 in offensive and defensive rebounding. Colorado is a really strong rebounding team. I wish they were a little bit more high volume from three. They're still efficient offensively. I do think they give Marquette some real trouble here, and I could see this game being one that they maybe cover but don't win, just because, again, the three-point line is where you beat Marquette, and that's not really Colorado's game, and Marquette's such a strong offense that I do think that they keep up. So I'm going to take Marquette to make it on, but I do think this will be a tough matchup. Texas Tech and Kentucky. Look, I don't like Texas Tech's offense enough to keep up with Kentucky. They rely a lot on Pop Isaacs, who's a really inefficient shooter who takes far too many shots, over 25% of their shots. I think in a matchup we talked about with NC State, it's a little bit different. Whereas, you look at this Texas Tech team and they're not quite the offense that I think can keep up with Kentucky. So I'm going to have Kentucky move it on there. Wisconsin and Duke. Man, if Wisconsin hits their strides playing their right game, I like their physicality a little bit more over this Duke team. I mentioned Storr, Chucky Hepburn, but they still got Stephen Crowell, the big man there, to match up with Kyle Filipowski. And they gave Zach Edey some trouble, just like they could give. They beat Purdue in the Big Ten tournament. So I do think they can give the same trouble to Filipowski here and the Duke interior offense. It'll be about Jeremy Roach making threes and a few others. But I think Wisconsin's hitting their stride at the perfect time. So I'm going to move them on to the Sweet 16. Houston and A&M is such an interesting matchup because they're both really strong rebounding teams. A&M should get to the line a ton. Houston will definitely allow that. A&M's a pretty solid defense as well. I always have trouble with this Houston team because I don't love their scoring. And you shouldn't like A&M scoring either because Radford and Taylor have been brutal in terms of their efficiency this year. But it just seems like the right recipe for A&M. Rebound well, get to the free throw line. Those are the things a strong Houston defense is giving up. And then again, Houston's a team that with their guard play, I could see LJ Cryer scoring a ton of points in this game, but Shed, Juwan Roberts is banged up. And then you look at a guy like Emmanuel Sharp, who hasn't been good enough for me. I'm going to take A&M to pull this thing out because I do like the matchup for them. Then we have Wisconsin and A&M. I have a lot of more faith in Wisconsin being able to hold A&M in check rebounding-wise. They're like a top 20 defensive rebounding team this season, and I do think that their offense can definitely be more efficient than A&M's, which have been obviously Jekyll and Hyde. They're like one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country, if you can believe it, and they still got here. They have some big wins, but also some bad losses. This is one of those games where I don't think we get their best, and Wisconsin wins this one. Kentucky and Marquette. I mentioned the problems rebounding-wise for Marquette. That is something that could rear its ugly head here against Kentucky, who's a really strong offensive rebounding team and a super efficient offense. So when they get those second chance points, they're going to take advantage of them. For Marquette, I mentioned their strength defending the interior, but not so much defending from three with Reeves. Reed Shepherd is the best three-point shooter in the country. He has like 150 three-point attempts. He's shooting over 50% from three. They make Marquette pay. I like Kentucky to make it to the Elite Eight. Now to the Midwest. We're starting with our one seed Purdue. They're going to get either Grambling State or Montana State. The SWAC has not won a round one game at any point, in the last couple of decades. Montana State was there last year. They lost a lot, miraculous run in their conference, but Purdue, not a problem for me in this game. Utah State, TCU. Mountain West is in this year as a team I think can certainly make a run, and it starts here for Utah State, who lost everyone from last year's team that lost in the first round, but they've turned it around and they won the Mountain West regular season. They get TCU, who they'll definitely be able to keep in check. Really strong rebounding team when it comes to defensive rebounding, where TCU has leaned on some really like their top 20 offensive rebounding team. Utah State can hold them in check there and also offensively get to the free throw line and score on the inside with Great Osobor. He'll have a huge game here. TCU's had some struggles defending the interior and keeping opponents off the line. That is all you need to know here. Utah State moves on. McNeese State, Gonzaga. This game should rock. McNeese State, led by Will Wade, former coach at LSU. Shahada Wells, a TCU transfer. This team has dominated their conference and also been competitive in some games out of conference that are surprising. Gonzaga is a team I've pounded the table on that I think they're really fraudulent. They don't have the guard play. They don't have the three-point shooting. And McNeese is a super strong interior defense, 30th in the country. They're really undersized, though, so that's something that's a bit of a concern against this Gonzaga team that plays through their bigs. With Graham Ike and then a Watson as well, those are the two guys they want to go to. How real is this McNeese State interior defense? And then the problem is they don't defensive rebound well. They play with their hair on fire when it comes to forcing turnovers, but Gonzaga's done a great job taking care of the ball. I feel like McNeese will be a popular team to pull off an upset, and I don't like this Gonzaga team, but I think I don't like them because as they get later in the tournament because of their lack of depth. Game 1, I'm just not quite there. If McNeese can make some threes in this game, I could see them pulling this thing out, but it's tough to attack this Gonzaga interior defense with their size. Like McNeese is a team that's 275th in three-point attempts per field goal attempts. They're like taking about 33, 34%. If it was 40%, and they take more threes in this game, that's how you beat Gonzaga. I'm just not quite there yet with this team. Kansas, Samford. We don't know the status right now of Hunter Dickinson and Kevin McCullough, the two best players for Kansas, and a Kansas team that has just no bench to go to, that went out with ease to Cincinnati in the Big 12 tournament, who's not even in the NCAA tournament. Samford, fast pace, a lot of threes, can make them as good as anybody can. This is one of those upsets for me. Kansas is just not a team I trust. They don't compete hard enough with Hunter Dickinson. Does not compete hard enough on the offensive glass, which is where you could probably take advantage of Samford here, it being a bit of an undersized team that doesn't rebound particularly well. But I think they're going to make their shots. And Kansas gives up a lot of three-point shots. Samford will make them. This is an upset for me. Now, this is a game I've gone back and forth on a lot. Oregon, South Carolina. I don't think this South Carolina team is I think it's a little bit fraudulent in their seeding. I don't think they're quite as good as the seed indicates. Oregon, a team that pulled out the Pac-12 tournament to get here. Thing is, Nafali Dante has been the straw that stirs the drink for this Oregon team. He's the 7-footer for the Ducks. And South Carolina's got a strong interior defense. They're going to be a great rebounding team as well to kind of hold Dante in check. And Oregon's defense has had some struggles. Their road to get here wasn't against those high-volume three-point shooting teams. South Carolina is that team. I don't love their offense, but I think in this matchup, I like them to get the better of Oregon here. Creighton and Akron. I'm very nervous for Creighton. Creighton's a team I had a future in on way back in the middle of the season at plus 4,000 to win the whole thing. Akron's a team that defends the three really well, and Creighton's really relying on it. But the thing is, Enrique Freeman for Akron is the guy they constantly push the ball to. Ryan Kalkbrenner is, again, the Big East Defensive Player of the Year. He's the big man there guarding the paint. And I think it's going to be very tough for Freeman to put up those numbers he typically has. He had 22 rebounds in their semifinal game against Ohio. I think Akron could pull something out here because they do want to put the three ball in play, but they don't make it at a high enough level. So I'm going to have Creighton moving on in this one. Texas is going to get the winner of Colorado State and Virginia. I think Virginia gets the best of Colorado State. Colorado State has really faltered throughout the latter half of the season after a really hot start. Texas, though, I love the duo of Max Asmus and Dylan Dessou. This is a Virginia team that's really not going to make you pay offensively, and they're just going to try to turn the game ugly. Really tough watch. I like Texas in terms of their offense kind of managing to stay afloat despite the tough matchup because of how good of players you have in Dessou and Asmus. And finally, this one is terrifying. Tennessee. Tennessee's a team that, their March Madness resume is well documented under Rick Barnes. St. Peter's, we know their story from a couple of years ago. They don't have any of those guys back. This is a really young team with a lack of experience. Tennessee gets Dalton Knecht. They have a lot of experience with Zakai Ziegler and Santiago Vescovi. Adu's been great for them defending the paint. You're not going to score in the paint against this Tennessee team. That's what St. Peter's wants to do. They have a great defense, force a lot of turnovers, but with Dalton Knecht leading the way, Tennessee takes care of the ball really well. And I don't see the recipe here. This isn't one of those teams that this is one of those matchups I think that they can take advantage of. So I'm going to take Tennessee moving on there. Making our way back up, Tennessee, Texas, battle of the two great orange-colored teams. This one's awesome. But I do think Tennessee, from the perspective of Texas not having enough beyond Asmus and Dessou when it comes to scorers, they just don't have. They lost a lot of that depth from the team that made the Elite Eight run last year. Too reliant on these two guys. Adu can hold Asmus in check, and then you got Ziegler and Vescovi to chase Asmus, to hold Dessou in check, and then you have Vescovi and Ziegler to chase Asmus around the floor and force Texas to go to some other scorers where I think they will struggle to do so. So I like Tennessee moving on there. South Carolina and Creighton, I mentioned I think South Carolina isn't quite the team that, the number and seed indicates. If Creighton gets past that tough Akron matchup, I don't think they have too much of a problem because their offense is just far more efficient than South Carolina's. Gonzaga and Samford. Look, I think this Gonzaga team is fraudulent. Samford, though, their problems with defending the glass is going to catch up to them in this matchup with Gonzaga. Again, three-point shooting is how you beat Gonzaga. Samford has that, but they're not a strong defensive rebounding team, and Gonzaga is really strong on the offensive glass, where I mentioned Kansas isn't. I think that's the difference here. Purdue, Utah State. Look, I don't think that interior scoring is going to be as easy as it came against, like we mentioned with TCU. It's not going to be the same against Purdue. Purdue's got great guard play this year. I think that kind of mends the problems that they had early in the season, from last year and how they were upset over Fairleigh Dickinson. Utah State, not enough here for me in terms of I need a little bit better three-point shooting, and I need a team that's not as reliant on getting points at the free throw line when you're playing Purdue. Purdue, Gonzaga, look, you're getting the feel here. The Boilermakers I like. They have Braden Smith. They have Lance Jones, guys that can make shots from the perimeter, that can make this Gonzaga defense pay, and then, of course, match up with strong interior defense, which is what you're going to need if you're playing this Gonzaga offense. Creighton, Tennessee, for me, is really, really tough. Creighton does not have a deep bench to go to, so by this time in the tournament, they could be running on some fumes. Tennessee, with Dalton Knecht, an offense that's just he's the best player in the country in my mind. And I do think that this offense can kind of score everywhere. Creighton's a team that doesn't do enough pressuring the ball to force turnovers. They're not going to get second chance points on the offensive glass. I like this Tennessee team in terms of their depth. Creighton, both these teams are known to be kind of fraudulent come the tournament. I'm going to take Tennessee because I just don't see enough depth from Creighton. Finally, we go to the West. North Carolina being the 1 seed, Howard and Wagner in that play-in 16 game. Wagner has just 7 healthy players. I really hope they get this matchup with North Carolina. It'll be a great story. But again, these aren't two teams I'm too worried about. Who knows, though? It's hard to decide the 16 seed that beats the 1 seed. Mississippi State, Michigan State. Look, Michigan State has struggled all year. They brought back a ton of talent in A.J. Hoggard, Tyson Walker, but they haven't lived up to expectation. I don't like Mississippi State's offense quite enough here. Tolu Smith should have a big game for the Aggies, but I don't like what they do otherwise from their guards to be able to take advantage of the Michigan State team. So I'm going to go Michigan State moving on there. St. Mary's, Grand Canyon. This is a fun matchup. Grand Canyon's a team that's been a really good offense that has pulled off some great wins throughout this regular season out of conference play. St. Mary's is a bad matchup, though. They want to lean on Ty and Grant Foster, the TCU transfer, to get them a ton of points. But St. Mary's with Mitchell Saxon just has such a good interior defense. It's going to make that really tough for Grand Canyon to be able to do so. They want to get to the line. They want to get their points in the interior. They're not going to have enough success rebounding-wise. I think St. Mary's kind of takes care of this one pretty easily despite some hype for this Grand Canyon team. Alabama and Charleston. Look, if Alabama's going to lose to somebody, it's going to be a team that can defend the three and a team that's going to get points on the interior. Charleston doesn't do those things. They take a ton of threes. This game is going to be a boat race. These teams play so fast, but Charleston doesn't have the recipe here to pull this one out because Alabama's offense is just way too good. You can't get into a three-point contest with the Crimson Tide. Clemson, New Mexico is a true toss-up for me. I feel pretty knowledgeable on these two teams. My concern for New Mexico is JT Toppin getting into foul trouble because PJ Hull has been a monster for Clemson. If Toppin can stay away from defending Hull, stay on the floor, I like New Mexico's chances here because they're going to defend the three well from some of these guards from Clemson, and then they're also going to be able to get to the free throw line in their own right, and then as well, the potential of Jalen House can make some threes for them. That'll be crucial here. This game is super close for me, but I'm going to lean New Mexico in this one. Baylor and Colgate. Look, this Colgate team has been to the dance like 5 straight years now, never pulled off a win in the first round. I could see them potentially, if that 3 points defense shows up, but it's so hard to get a read on Colgate because the Patriot League is just absolutely terrible. If their 3-point defense shows up, Baylor's a team that they could catch. But Baylor's really a super efficient offense, and Colgate's defense has been really good this year. Their offense has kind of taken a bit of a step back. I just don't see quite enough, but this could be one that surprises us. I am going to have this on my radar. Dayton and Nevada. Look, I look at this game originally, and I thought I really like this Nevada team to be able to make some sort of run. Love Jared Lucas and Blackshear as well. But Dayton is a team that gives them some trouble. Nevada is really reliant on scoring inside and getting to the free throw line. Dayton's going to take that away. They're the 3rd best team in the country in defending without fouling. I like Dayton to win this game despite Nevada being such a strong team. Deron Holmes is been one of the best players in the country this year for the Flyers, so I do like Dayton moving on. Look, I know Arizona is a team that struggled last year, lost to Princeton as a 2 seed. They don't lose here. Long Beach State, too reliant on interior scoring. We want 3-point shooting to beat Arizona like Princeton has or had last year. Long Beach State doesn't have that. They don't take the three much at all. They won't be able to beat Arizona in this game. You know who will beat Arizona, though? One of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country, Dayton. Dayton beats Arizona. That's a big upset in this tournament. But, man, this Arizona team just not consistent enough. Caleb Love was like off the floor late in the Pac-12 tournament because they just could not trust him scoring-wise. So I like Dayton in that game. New Mexico and Baylor. I really like New Mexico. Baylor's interior defense has been really bad this year. New Mexico's 3-point defense has been great to be able to hold guys like Jacoby Walter, Jalen Bridges, Ray J. Dennis in check because they take a lot of threes. JT Toppin has a monstrous game and New Mexico moves on. I mentioned what we need to be able to beat Alabama: interior scoring and great defense. St. Mary slows this game down, and they beat Alabama because Alabama plays absolutely zero defense. North Carolina, Michigan State, a bit of a tough one for me. What I'm going to lean on is the more consistency we've gotten from this Armando Bacot-led Tar Heels team. I think he could potentially be the X factor in this matchup, and Michigan State just has not found it, and it's tough to just again, flip the switch and find it. So I'm going to go North Carolina there. All right, North Carolina, St. Mary's. Look, I love the run that this St. Mary's team is capable of, and I definitely think they're capable of winning this game. But when you play at this slow pace and play by the margins with a North Carolina team, it's a little bit more, how would I describe them compared to Alabama? They just a little bit more settled down in their offensive sets. I think they're end up being a little bit more efficient here, especially from their guards. Should have a good game here. But I love St. Mary's as a team. They could definitely pull this out, but I'm going to go North Carolina. New Mexico, Dayton. I mentioned New Mexico's ability to defend the three. That translates to this Dayton matchup. Again, won't get to the free throw line as much. Going to need to be a little bit more efficient in this game from an offensive perspective from New Mexico. But look, if they beat Clemson, I love their road to potentially getting to the Elite Eight. So I got them beating Dayton here. All right, our Elite Eight matchups: UConn, Illinois, and we have Wisconsin and Kentucky. I've mentioned this Illinois team that has, when playing some of the top competition in their conference or out of conference, they've consistently fallen short. And that's my concern here with this particular matchup, because UConn is just such a strong team that's at that top level. I know Illinois pulling out the Big Ten tournament didn't face a lot of that high level, like missed a Purdue in the tournament as well, missed some of the stronger teams. Still haven't completely proven it to me yet against the top dogs. UConn is just so consistent, and when they're not playing in true road games, they take care of business. So I'm going to take UConn here. Wisconsin and Kentucky. Look, I like Wisconsin. I do think they're a stronger defense than Kentucky's, but on the season, they haven't proven to be too strong defensively. I know they'll be able to kind of keep things in check from a rebounding perspective, but efficiency-wise, offensively, these are two teams that when I look at the matchup, I like Kentucky's talent a little bit more. North Carolina, New Mexico. North Carolina is a team that I don't think has a ton of trouble here. I think they're a little bit more not as one-dimensional as some of these opponents New Mexico could see. And in terms of, again, New Mexico being a fantastic team, I love their talent with Donovan Dent, JT Toppin, and that duo there. I think we see them held a little bit more in check with their defense in the paint from North Carolina. So I'm going to go North Carolina there. Purdue and Tennessee would be such an exciting matchup. The two best players in the country in Dalton Connect and Zach Edey. But what I love about this Purdue team is, again, facilitator in Braden Smith, 3-point shooting from Lance Jones. We haven't even talked about Fletcher Lawyer as well. Tennessee is, Dalton Connect is that offense. And the focus will be taking him away. Purdue just has a little bit more scoring that they didn't have last year to be able to pull this thing out. So I like Purdue in this one. All right, our Final Four looks great here. We've got our 1 seeds in UConn and North Carolina. We've got a 3 seed in Kentucky and a 1 seed in Purdue. And by the time you get to this late into the tournament, you're going to see those 1 seeds prevail. And we did have a lot of craziness here, but at the end, things kind of settled down. So I like this UConn team in the matchup with North Carolina, with Donovan Clingan, their 3-point defense their interior defense really strong. I think they can hold a guy like Armando Bacot in check. Ask North Carolina to rely on a guy like RJ Davis, who just hasn't been fantastic in these types of in these tournament games. So I like their ability to take away Bacot there. So I like UConn making it to the national title game. Purdue and Kentucky. Look, Kentucky has a lot of depth, a lot of scorers where they've struggled rebounding and keeping opponents off the free throw line. And with Edey, I think that's a bit of a major problem. Now, Kentucky can definitely keep up offensively. Foul trouble will be a bit of a concern here for sure. And with a Kentucky team that doesn't get to the line very much, we're not going to see Purdue in as much foul trouble. I like Purdue quite a bit this year. I know this is the Virginia storyline of losing to a 16 and top seed and winning the national championship. But I do feel comfortable with where Purdue is at in terms of what they've learned from that massive loss from last year. So having Purdue making the national championship game. Now we get to the two teams who I think many thought were the two best in the country to start the season. And I like the story for Purdue. I think that this team is complete. This team is ready to win a national title. I mentioned how tough it is to go back-to-back. I think UConn comes very close with the way they've dominated this year, but I like Purdue here and Zach Edey finishing his college career with a national championship. Honestly, when I built this bracket, I did not expect to be doing this, but it just, the way that Purdue's draw is, I like their matchups. And there's a couple teams that I do like this year that have a little bit of a tougher draw, like I mentioned with an Iowa State or even Tennessee and Creighton being in that same region as Purdue as well. So that is my national champion, Purdue. Would love to hear what you guys have as well in your national championship or in your bracket, your national championship picks, your first round upsets. Appreciate you guys so much for watching this video. If you're looking for more March Madness content, we've got it coming tomorrow. I mentioned we're going to be talking about all 68 teams, a little bit more on them as well if you want to get to know them. And we will see you guys on the next video.